Welcome to part 2 of the How to Fish with No Experience series. In video number 1, I shared with you a lot of the basics, right? We walked through a lot of the different types of rod and reel combos. I walked you through the 4 different types of fishing line out there, walked through hooks, hook sizes. I even shared with you the top 3 beginner-friendly baits. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to properly spool a spinning reel with fishing line. I'm going to share with you one of the best beginner-friendly knots that you can tie every single time. Then I'm going to share with you how to find fishable waters that actually hold fish and how to fish high percentage areas. And we're going to end with an app that I've been using for years that really have helped me out, and I believe it's going to help you out. All right, so first we'll top into how to properly spool your spinning reel. And so this is really key because there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So most mono, your fluorocarbon, and your co-polymer line have memory. That's going to be the curl of the line from being wrapped around the spool for a long period of time. And if you spool them incorrectly, every crank adds a twist, leading to more tangles, more loops, and more blowups. Now, the fix is you want the line to come off the spool in the same direction that it goes onto the reel. So if the proper direction is not immediately apparent, I want you to start reeling your reel. So I put some tape on my reel here, and I'm going to start reeling this. And as you'll see, this is going on counterclockwise, right? And so we want the line to come off this in the same direction, right? So if this is coming off like this, we want this line to be coming off the same way, which is counterclockwise. And it's not going to be perfect because the diameter of this spool is a lot larger than the diameter of this spool. And so you're still potentially going to get some tangles. Every once in a while, what I do is I'll reel some on, I'll flip it over, reel a little bit more, I'll flip it back over and reel it. And so you can kind of dial it in that way. So that's a big mistake that a lot of people make. And one of the reasons it may not be working for you is because you bought cheap line. And the cheaper the line typically is, the more memory it's going to have and the more it's going to want to billow off of your reel, and it's going to cause those blow ups. And what a blow up is, whenever you cast in that first guide, there's just a ton of line that gets stuck there. Because what happens is when you cast it, and between the time that you cast it and you make sure that's tight, line will billow off and it will get all knotted up. And when you cast it the next time, you didn't realize that until it blows up and you got a real mess on your hands. And so another problem that people have is that they actually put too much line on the spool. So what you want to do is leave 1/8 of an inch, because if you wrap this all the way around where the line is kind of flush with the spool, it's just going to want to billow even more and cause a lot of problems for you. And another issue a lot of people get in trouble with, they use too thick of line for their spinning reel. So typically once you get up past 8 pounds, so it's going to be a thicker diameter, you're going to move kind of over to either a really large spinning reel or a bait caster. So typically when you hit that 10-pound range, I'm using that line on a bait casting reel. So I typically only use 8-pound and below for the spinning reels. So a couple things to keep in mind whenever you're spooling. So what you're going to do is you want to tie, and you can just tie an overhand knot if you want to. If you really want to get into it, you can tie an arbor knot, kind of a slip knot that'll get that thing tightened down. But once you tie this knot, you're really never going to see that knot again until you put on new line. So I don't worry about it too much. But one of the things that can be frustrating, especially as a beginner, is a lot of people will just put this on, they'll put the line through their guides, they will tie it on to their spool, and they did not flip the bail. So make sure that you flip the bail and then put the line on, so when you go to reel it up, it's actually going to bail that line around your spool. So remember that. So a little hack, let's say you forgot, you already have this lined up, you don't want to take it off, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. A little hack is you can actually take off this drag cap by twisting it to the left. Let's see if I can get that to come off here. Almost. Boom, you can take this off, flip the bail, and then put it back on, and then tighten it back up. So if you happen to forget, not a big deal. Then you just got to reset your drag. Next, and I mentioned this in the first video, I'm going to teach you one of the knots I use 95% of the time. So let's say you're not using mono or fluoro or copolymer, but you have braid, and that's what you're putting on your spinning reel. Well, the good news is braid has virtually no memory, so you're not going to have an issue with it getting caught up or blowing up in your guide. However, a lot of people, what they like to do, because braid is visible, of course, to fish underwater, what they'll use is a braided main line. So the majority of their spool will be braid, and then they'll tie an Albright knot knot to a fluorocarbon leader, which might be 5 feet or so. And so if that's something you want to kind of dig into, just search on YouTube how to tie an Albright knot, and then you'll know how to put those two lines together so they won't break off when you catch that bass. So next I'm going to share with you a knot that I use 95% of the time. That is called the Palomar knot. I want to show you how to tie it, because you can tie this thing in the dark, which is great because for some of us, we like the night fish. All right, so I have this black piece of paper down so you can kind of see the contrast of this line, and I got a nice swim jig that my buddy Jason Emery made for me. Made me a bunch of them actually, so thank you, Jason. So what I'm going to do, tie a Palomar knot. So you're going to run the line through the line pull of the lure like that, and then you're going to turn around and run it right back through. All right, then you're going to have what looks like this. Next, you're just going to do an overhand knot with this loop. So let's go ahead and tie an overhand knot with that loop. Great. Now you have this loop right here, and then you're going to take the lure and you're going to put it through that loop, just like that. All right, then typically would wet this because you don't want to create friction, but something key here is you want to make sure that around that line pull, that line in there does not overlap each other. So it's not, I would wet this typically, and so then you pull that tight like so, kind of pull it out, and then I would snip off this end right here, which I'm going to do with my teeth, which is a terrible habit. There you go. And now, my friends, you have a very, very strong Palomar knot. You set the hook, and it's not going to go. See if I can actually break that. All right, no, it's not going anywhere. So that is a solid knot called the Palomar knot. So I'd practice that a bit, and actually, I might actually take this out with me fishing tomorrow. All right, so here's a little hack I'll share with you. I wasn't planning on sharing it, but if you keep on missing a hook set, say on one of the lures that you have, and you don't know why, you might want to check the hook. Sometimes they get dull. You catch a lot of bass with them, or maybe you hook set into a log or some type of stone. You want to make sure that is sharp. And how you do that is if you take that hook and you rub it on your fingernail and it leaves a white line or it's like really sticky, then you're good. If you rub it on your fingernail and it's not sticky, you're either going to want to sharpen that hook or you want to replace that lure. So, all right, so now let's talk about finding fishable waters. And there's a saying out there that 10% of the water holds 90% of the fish. Now, let me walk you through some of the best places, especially as a beginner, to start fishing. And one is going to be those local lakes and ponds. These are going to be your smaller lakes. These are going to be those community ponds. Maybe those public piers and those river banks where you see cars parked along all the time. And a lot of times what you find at these local lakes and at these piers and at these docks is there's actually man-made fishing attractors underneath the water that you may not know about. And in fact, if you go to some of their websites and you look on those topographical maps, they will actually show you where those man-made fishing attractors are, and those are going to be some of those high percentage areas. So make sure before you go out to that body of water, be checking the lake or pond that you're going to, and there might be some underwater fish attractors you didn't know about. So next you're going to look for stocked waters, and you can do this by going online and see if there's any stocked waters around you. A lot of times there's companies that will come in for the city and they'll stock it with catfish, they'll stock it with trout and panfish, you name it. If you know which lakes are regularly stocked, those are going to be another high percentage area for you as well. I recently was out fishing and I just happened to come across one of those stocking trucks that put 1,600 rainbow trout in a really small pond. There were like 20 or 30 anglers sitting on the bank just ready to catch them. It was a lot of fun. All right, so let me walk you through now how to read the water. It's one of the important skills that you will develop over time, but I believe I can give you some things to kind of get you started and get way above that learning curve that took me 30 years to learn. But first, there are two words that get used a lot interchangeably, but they are different. I even hear the pros using it incorrectly, and that's going to be structure and cover. So structure is going to refer to the permanent areas of the lake. These are going to be your creek channels. These are going to be your ledges. These are going to be your old road beds. These are going to be your underwater bridges. Permanent structure. Then you got cover. This is the stuff that's not permanent. Even things like stumps and underwater brush piles. These things over time are going to erode away. So technically you can have underwater cover. You might have lily pads as cover. Fallen trees, laydowns. These are all cover because they are not permanent. They won't be there forever like a rock will or like a ledge will. But as a fisherman, especially a bass fisherman, what you're looking for is any type of sign of cover and structure, because bass are predatory fish. They like to hide along those dock pilings. They like to hide next to those rock piles. So when the bait fish kind of run by, they can swim out, and that's how they eat. So all of those places that have structure and cover, places where bass can hide, maybe get out of the sunlight, get out of the way of predatory birds, these are gonna be where bass are, a lot of times where big bass are. So next, let me walk you through another high percentage area, especially if it's a sunny day out. You're gonna wanna fish the shade spots, right? Especially if it's sunny, these bass like to move to these shade spots, and when they're in the shade spots, a lot of times the shade spots are pretty small, and if you can get to it, especially bank fishing, especially kayak fishing and boat fishing, if you could skip that lure under that overhanging tree, a lot of times those are going to be high percentage areas where you likely will get one. So the next high percentage areas, you want to target that cover. It's going to be your weeds, it's going to be your grass, it's going to be your lily pads. You got to remember, these areas are like a conveyor belt of food, right? A lot of bait fish live under and in around these areas. And whenever you find bait fish, especially, you're going to find largemouth bass, which is what I primarily target. So that's a lot of lake fishing. If you're fishing in a river, you got to pay attention to the current. So bass are low energy, high reward, meaning typically they're going to stage looking upstream, and they're going to put themselves in like that slack water, right? They don't want to be sitting there all day expending energy waiting for bait to come by. So what they'll do is they'll get in kind of to an eddy, they'll be around a bank, and they'll get to the place where there's a lot of slack water. Notice, sit there, and they will wait for bait to come by, and when it does, bam, they smash it. And so if you're fishing a river, one of the lures that I love throwing out there, I mean, I love throwing live bait as well, but if you have a wacky worm, throw that up. If you see a current kind of going around a big rock, throw that up there, let it flutter through there, and a lot of times they will just smack it. So now I want to share with you the app that I've been using for years. It's called the Deep Dive app. And one of the reasons I love it, especially I love it for beginners out there, is there's something called the bait tool. And the bait tool is once you go into it, and it actually be hyper specific to the lake or pond or body of water that you fish. You can go through and be like, I have no clue what to throw right now, and it will show you what to throw. And so it's saying a finesse bait, a deep diving jerk bait, a tube, a drop shot, a blade bait. And let's say you have a finesse bait. You click on that, it's going to show you the locations of where you're going to want to fish it. It's going to show you the cover. It's going to show you the structure, what we just talked about. It's going to show you, we say, hey, I have no clue how to retrieve this thing. It's going to show you how to retrieve it. Then it's going to show you the gear, the type, the length, the action, the power. And here's the thing, that's not a problem. You can just kind of go through, you'd be like, hey, I only have a beginner rod. And so you can kind of go through here, you'd be like, hey, the tube might be perfect for the beginner rod that I shared with you, which in most cases, it will. That rod and reel and line setup, you can actually put a tube on that and have success just like you would with the Texas rig, that compact spinner bait, or that Ned rig. So I love the Deep Dive app. It does a lot more for you. I actually use it for my weather. It's going to show you the feeding windows, which are going to be minor feeding windows. It's going to go over here to some of the major feeding windows. If you're like, hey, what is the best time to fish? It's taking a lot of information. It's giving you those hyper specific feeding windows for your body of water. So check that out at Deep Dive. In fact, I'll put a link in the first comment below so you can check that out yourself. So also remember this, a lot of people forget, especially if you're new to fishing, make sure you get that license, right? You want to make sure that you're fishing legal. Don't want you to get a ticket on your first time out. Now they make these really easy. You can get them online now. You can go to Walmart, you can get them there. So a lot of different places you can get your license. And number two, so whenever you get your fishing license, you're going to get a regulations book. Now you're going to want to read that because you don't want to get yourself in trouble. So you might be thinking to yourself, hey, I'm good to go. I can go out there and start fishing. Well, I highly recommend that you go to the next video, the final video, because I'm going to share with you a few really important things. Number one, how to cast, how to detect bites, how to hook set. I'm going to share with you how to set your drag, how to fight a fish, how to land fish, and more importantly, common mistakes, how to lip a bass, and the colors that are absolute money for catching bass. And I'll be completely honest with you, there are a lot of color options out there for soft plastics and for wacky worms, but only two get my money. You can check that out right there. See you in a minute, guys. Thanks for watching.